Live song. We're going live. We're live. Welcome back, everybody, to another marvelous episode of the best darn show on the internet, the Over Sharon show. And when we say best darn internet, I mean best darn show on the internet, we're serious. We're not just joking around. So get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. Don't go anywhere. Actually, stay here. This is the best darn show on the internet, and we're excited to have you guys. What's up, Sharon? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited about today's topic.
Me as well. Yes, I have some good moringa tea with cinnamon
Mm,
in it, and I'm ready to talk.
nice, moringa.
I think I'm going to put my hair down though once we get really going. But before we do that, let me pull up today's quote. And today's quote is all right, move out of my way, Zoom. Okay, the most common form of despair is not being who you are. And that's Soren Kierkegaard. There's a little
So
picture of him I put in there.
I don't know very much about Soren Kierkegaard. I've heard his name. I've heard people quote him, but I must admit I don't know very much. We'll talk about the quote in a second, but I just wanted to point out that his name sounded very Norwegian to me because I knew some Norwegian people back when I used to work a 9 to 5, and I went to Norway in 2017.
He
And
was, oh, go ahead.
pardon me.
No, no, keep going. I was just going to give a brief description of who he
Oh
was.
yeah, okay. And I was going to quickly say that I remember that kirke means church. So
Oh,
I was like, oh, I'm gonna double check and we'll look that up and I'm gonna see what if guard means anything. Well, guess what it means? It
to guard.
means farm. So
Oh,
it's a church farm or a
uh,
farm church.
yeah. So was he even really a person? Probably. According to the internet, it says that Soren Kierkegaard, Danish theologian, philosopher, poet, and social critic. He lived from 1813 to 1855. So he was only like 41 or 2 when he passed on.
Wow, that was young.
Yeah. All right. And if you'd like more, you can go to google.com and find all the information you'd like.
Any of your favorite uh search engines like
Yes, you can go.
Start Page or Quant, some of the other ones I use, DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Um, but yes, let's talk about the quote, if we will.
Yeah, let's talk about this quote. So, I mean, it's pretty simple, but I feel like we could break it down kind of like how we break down the Tao. Here, I'll bring it up again. The most common form of despair. So he's speaking in like the mid 1800s, is not being who you are. And you think of like the Industrial Revolution was about to take place or, getting going right before this is right before like the Civil War. Well, maybe about 5, 10 years before when he died. So he's in this time. And I guess people were probably already just working and not really following. They were kind of like being wage slaves already, I bet, or something like that. So he's just seeing that there's this despair out there. And, think about these days, people go to psychiatrists or they take different medicine or drink or whatever to self medicate to try to get over this despair. They can't understand what it is. And we talk about this a lot and we kind of break it down to most of this despair comes from not fulfilling your purpose or maybe doing something that is in alignment with natural law. Netter.
Yeah, not being who you are. At when I first saw this quote when you sent it to me earlier, I I I didn't see the word common. Um, and so like in my mind, it was just like it was almost like in my mind I was thinking it's like the worst kind of despair. Um, and I thought, yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
it's like if you can't just be, you know, yourself, because being is to be yourself. Um, what are you doing? You're putting on a mask, you're being fake, you're not being authentic. And that is stressful. And could it be that's what causes the stress of lives?
Yeah,
And
and it doesn't
stress
mean
causes dis-ease and all kind of other stuff. Go ahead.
no, 100%. I was gonna say to add to that that it doesn't mean you have to be some kind of spiritual guru or monk or like think that you have some special purpose that you're gonna change the entire world. You're gonna change the world. Uh, you don't even have to do that. You just have to look inward and see the world in a different place, and then you can figure out that no matter what you're doing could be your purpose. Because that's kind of the other way to look at this, the Taoist way or maybe the Zen way, because you just try to pick everything apart and bust balls, right? So you'd look at it and be like, well, um, hang on, let me look at this again. Yeah, not being who you are. So if you could just accept this is who you are, then you will be who you are. So it's kind of this concept you talk about of just realizing already that you are perfect. So even if you have a job that you're not happy with, um, or whatever it is in your life and you feel like you're not fulfilling your purpose, you could say, well, right now I'm learning and all the stuff I'm learning is going to be better now. So I am kind of fulfilling my purpose and you can accept that and you could look at that job in a new way, whatever you're doing. You could be the best at it or bring joy to people. Sometimes people work in the service industry and you could just make people laugh or whatever it is, or in a
Yeah,
hospital
that
or
reminds me of Bootsy, who says like his life purpose is to just bring joy to people. And he's like, it's that simple.
yeah, and then, you are being who you are, so you don't have to have that despair. It's another way. You don't even have to make any changes outward in your physical life, what you're doing. You just have to look at things differently and boom, it's all good. The despair separate
Mm.
evaporates.
That is a preaching to me, bro. That is a preaching.
Yeah, we're all preaching to ourselves, but I think that it really I feel like this whole universe or whatever, or this realm that we're in is like it's a machine designed to try to trick you away from your purpose, to make you afraid. So you get stuck in the future, worried about it, or in the past, and I've been doing this with the litany against fear, like when issues or I have or whatever, and I'm worried about the future, I just go through it and I'm like, there's nothing to fear. And it brings me back. And I've noticed because of that, certain things I've been struggling with are starting to take care of themselves. Like there's paths that are opening up and doors opening just because I was not in despair and like, you know, looking for these doors, I guess you could say. So it's really cool.
Yes, indeed. Well, because today is a day that we talk about the esoteric and the occult, I decided I'm pulling from the Thoth deck, Aleister Crowley's, the infamous Aleister Crowley,
The infamous.
the infamous. You know what I'm talking about when I say that?
Yeah, the three amigos. He's infamous. We're gonna work with this guy. Work with this gay. Yeah. It's funny because I know I'll save it for the podcast. Keep going. Yeah. That's
Remember what you're going to say, okay?
Oh, don't worry, I can't forget it. I have questions. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, okay, okay.
That was
All right. Well, of course, I pulled a card that says strength and it has a number 9 on it. Nine of, is this wands or is this wands, Brandon?
I believe so. Yeah, because they're like, oh wait, maybe no, because they're like
Okay.
arrows, so that could
It
be.
can,
Oh, it
yeah.
says it on the bottom though. Yeah, wands. See,
Oh, oops, I didn't see it. I just saw strength.
yeah, behind the, it's hiding behind the
I'm
word
like, strength, that's my card.
strength. So yeah, no,
Strength, 9, those are like my things. Numbers, my 11, 8, 9. I see these things.
9. Hey, why didn't you say 8, 9, 11, 10? I
10.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, bake these cookies for
Basically,
9 to
8,
11
9, 10,
minutes.
11. I see a lot.
Oh,
It's cray cray. So,
interesting.
um, so do you know much about the, I think you know the nine of wands, right? Is that one of the ones you used to get sometimes, or the eight of wands?
The Eight of Wands is the one that I have, and I modeled a tattoo of. I have a neck tattoo. No, I'm just kidding. I have a tattoo on my arm. I remember when neck tattoos were you were like a gangster. Now just anyone gets them. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, Nine of Wands. So the Eight of Wands is my jam, but the nine is we talk about nines all the time where it's kind of like the climax. It's the high point.
Complete, almost completion.
Yeah, it's the point at what you get the power of that suit and it's in maximum. And then the 10 is like the close. So that's what 10 is higher, but 10 also does imply kind of the death of it or the ending of the rebirth in the cycle
And
because
the
the
new
one's there with
beginning.
the zero. So really esoterically nine, and also nines represent the ego, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Ego isn't a bad word, as I'm sure we're going to talk about today. But really nines also, like bounty, all this stuff. So it's really it could be a very good number. And it's almost like a zero esoterically because anything that you add nine to, like 9 plus 5 is 14. And then when you dissolve, when you do it numerologically, 14 is 1 plus 4 is 5. So you're back at 5 again.
Yeah,
So any
if you
number,
add anything to nine, you get the same, you get the number, the other number.
yes. So it has this property of kind of like zero, but not really, this
Yeah, it's very interesting.
it's really, yeah, it's really interesting. So you think about all that, and this is an esoteric way to kind of feel what it means to you, because this is what we're talking about today, everybody, right? The esoteric, which is the inner world. So what does it mean to you? What does it mean to your intuition? This nine, and then wands are the suit of action, fire. Um, so in this, we're going to be talking about mostly in esoterically fire. It's like self work, right? Or even creation if you're creating your own life, which we all are doing. So anything you might be creating, it can also apply to that. So I like this card because we're revisiting this topic that we talked about in the beginning, episode 1 of the Over Sharon show from way back in 2021. Seems like a whole lifetime.
August, or yeah, I think it
Yeah.
was late August of 2021.
Yeah. So almost 4 years. So 3.5 years. Uh, So we're going to be talking about this topic again and revisiting it. So I think the nine is appropriate because we have learned a lot about this and what it means to ourselves in the past 3.5 years of working on ourselves and talking about these topics every week. So it'll be fun to see and to see what our audience thinks about it. But I think it bodes well for us. Definitely a lot of fire going on, so it should be a good one.
Shall I read?
Yeah, please do.
All right. Well, it says the keywords are Sun in Sagittarius,
Ooh,
power gained through unifying conscious and unconscious energies. That is very synced for me because I'm reading about that in lots of different books that I'm reading. And this last keyword is wholeness, which that's the unifying thing, right? Unity. The
lovely.
strong wand in the center connects the sun and moon. Hidden unconscious powers, moon, become visible through the radiant light of the conscious, sun. Latent powers are awakened and can be applied toward a purpose. Recognizing these unused potentials sets free more energies, which are experienced as new and unusual. It is a strength that grows from within, symbolized through the crescent moons on the 8 arrows in the background. The force of this newfound strength banishes the darkness of ignorance. When the unconscious becomes visible, we are faced with many things we have covered up in order to avoid looking at them.
Yeah.
This can produce fear of some sort. Okay, I just got to say, this is so apropos because a lot of people like fear this like idea of the occult and the esoteric. Um, and we talked about it on episode 1 a little bit about the whole fear. But anyway,
And that's
that was
before we
very
knew about the litany against fear. Well, it's before I memorized it.
Yeah. There may also simply be fear of our own yet unproven strength, which reaches into all areas of our lives, reorganizing them. This budding self realization allows no return to the familiar situation of weakness or ignorance. Your inner strength will grow with the size of the task at hand. You will experience your energy as going far beyond the boundaries you thought existed. This is a key experience, the beginning of a far reaching inner and outer unfolding of your potential. And I'm going to read the four little pieces here. Indications. You are in the process of discovering your real strength. Trust your inner guide. You may want to take part in groups which can help you develop and unfold your potential. Question. Are you a little afraid of your own strength? In what areas in your life does this fear come up? Suggestion. Pay attention to your dreams at this time. Affirmation. I know more and more clearly who I am. This recognition leads to the full development of my potential strength.
Ooh,
This whole card is like so appropriate for today. It's crazy.
yeah, I like
But I
that.
did ask for that. I wanted it. I said I wanted something that was could be like a theme for the show today.
No, it worked out well. I have my Crowley deck as well. I could pull a card.
Sure.
All right, doesn't cooperate. There we go. Oh, the Knight of Swords. And the eight, it's funny because the Ace of Cups is right under it, and that's what I pulled while I was shuffling it. So I guess we have to talk about both of them. So the Ace of Cups, and I think this is important to understand and to talk about and highlight because cups represent a
Emotion.
vessel that can hold water, so it's emotions esoterically. And this is really what we're talking about here is the intuition. And I feel like the Ace of Cups can represent the intuition. All cups could obviously, but the Ace of Cups represents it, especially at the beginning when you first start to get in contact with it, or anytime you're trying to um strengthen the voice of your intuition, you're trying to focus on it and work on it, or however you would call it. I think the Ace of Cups is a good card for that. And especially if we're going to be talking about the occult and esoteric stuff and the way that we view it, and all these symbols and stuff, it's really important to be in touch with your intuition for this stuff and your emotions and how you feel about it. Because if you're running not off your intuition and you start to come across a lot of these concepts, you could start to, get excited and go off the deep end and all this stuff. So I think it's important to stay connected to your intuition.
Absolutely. And
Uh,
some people would call the intuition, the Holy Spirit.
yeah. Oh, and I put the Knight of Swords back in the deck. It's all right. We could always talk about it later if we need to. It was right on this when I opened the way I pulled it. I went like this, and the Ace of Cups was there. So I think that's the card I was supposed to see
Okay.
twice.
Nice.
Twice is nice, yeah.
Fantastic.
And I guess let me, you know what? I keep getting my hair stuck in the deck. It's so funny. My beautiful locks keep getting stuck in this tarot deck. All right.
I was rewatching episode 1 and 1.1, and I couldn't believe how different everything was. Like your hair was like right, I think your hair was like right here,
Yeah,
maybe. It was like shoulder length. And
yeah. And the camera
I look
angles and
different
stuff.
too.
Yeah, and the camera angles are all different before we have these
Yeah,
cameras.
we have different cameras, yeah.
Uh,
And the audio is not fantastic for me because I was using the iPad audio.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oops.
I didn't have a mic yet.
Yeah, I don't think I was using one then either for that, or maybe I was. I can't remember. I think I had the
I think you probably were using one.
yeah USB one. Oh,
Yeah.
that's Ace. All right. Ace of Cups. Keyword overflowing love, emotional clarity, deep love of the self. There we go, giving and receiving. The white lotus is the symbol for love and a giving nature. It forms the base of the cup, which is blue color of the element of water. Vertically through the cup flows a brilliant energy beam uniting Earth and cosmos. And that's a good Earth and cosmos. It's kind of as above, so below, inner, outer worlds. The cup is the medium which makes itself available for the coming together of the above and below, the inner and the outer. The Ace of Cups is the feminine counterpart of the Ace of Wands, open, receptive,
Mm.
surrendering, bearing the transformatory power of giving love. The upper and lower portions of the painting embody the same quality. Below in the emotional realm of water, yeah, that's what it says. Below in the emotional realm of water, above in the ethereal sphere of the spirit, as above, so below. That which is internally felt expresses itself externally, clearly, and openly. Emotional clarity results. Emotional clarity results, and we talk about this all the time, right? Ordering your inner to match the outer instead of hiding and stuff like that. Emphasized in the painting by its balance and harmony. So that's what I'll read that last part. Emotional clarity results, emphasized in the painting by its balance and harmony. The giving of love happens effortlessly. That which continually flows into us from the boundless abundance of the universe radiates outward again by itself. If we remain open and receptive, you can compare it with a flower which exudes its fragrance, whether someone comes close to enjoy its perfume or not. Oh, I like that. So it's not like a conditional love. It's just you're just always open. And again, we're talking about self love here, or that's what we're focusing on in this show anyway. So, this giving is not dependent on individual, perhaps close people. There is so much to share. All of existence can take part in it. Becoming one with the all embracing, omnipresent love is such a silent ecstasy, a cosmic orgasm. All right, Gerd. Good. No, it's a, I knew he had a funny name. I couldn't remember it though. Indication you are in contact with all embracing love. It fills you and you can pass it on generously, lavishly to others. Question: what is your way of expressing love? Suggestion: let the card work on you for a while. There we go. We'll talk about it later in the episode, maybe. Read the last two paragraphs of the description again and close your eyes. Feel yourself as an open channel for the divine energy. All encompassing love fills me and my environment. Oh, that's the affirmation. All encompassing love fills me and my environment. And if you want to hear the last two paragraphs again, just rewind this in the future and you can close your eyes and listen to my lovely voice.
Yeah, see, you don't have to read. You can just listen.
There you go.
Because he's like, close your eyes. He's like, read it and close your eyes. It's like, how can I read it with my with my eyes closed?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
I did.
just kidding.
All right, Gerd, with your cosmic orgasm. All right, no, that's
Well,
okay. Hey, what are you gonna do?
I wanted to talk about why we're doing this episode because I just want to give a little background. Um, I've been dipping into all these different books, and Source just allows me to find certain books kind of interesting, and I open them up, I pop them open, and I read a few lines, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is good, and then I just keep reading, and I just keep reading, and then I pop up open another book that looks interesting, I keep reading that, but like simultaneously, I'm kind of dipping back into them all, and it something. Which book was it? Yeah, Origins of the Tarot. That book it it started talking about the esoteric and the occult in such a way that it was kind of distinguishing between, I'm going to say, like the negative and the positive view of them, like the two different polarities, I would say, of like viewing the occult in a certain way versus its opposite. And I thought it very helpful. And I remembered the first episode. Well, I won't call it the first, but it's episode one because we had an episode zero, which was our first episode.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember episode one and I was like, well, what did we talk about on that episode? And I thought, it'd be really great to just recap and maybe get a little bit more clarity on these words and maybe dispel some. fears and misunderstandings about these words. And that's why I wanted to do this. But I told Brandon this like 2 weeks ago, I think, when I was starting to read that book. And the intro was like, I was like, oh my gosh, Brandon, this book is so good. And I sent him some screenshots and I'm just like, dude, this is so good. And yeah, we'll be reading a little bit of that. But I just wanted to say that it was very timely, I think, to get back into this topic and just kind of a little bit of whatever, touch back on it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. This is a good topic, I think, to do kind of a refresher on for us and our lovely slaves. I mean, audience, our lovely audience. And I do want to say we should start. We should start by just talking about the word occult itself and just these words, esoteric, exoteric, and the easiest breakdown of this would be to occult
Can
just means hidden. It comes from occultare, occultare in Latin. Whoa. And it just means hidden from the eye. And, after several, a lot of time studying this stuff and looking into it, all this stuff, and doing self work, what it really means to me when it says hidden, and we'll get into this, but it doesn't. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't spoil it. Yeah, like some people are like, oh, who's hiding this? Is there like some cabal, evil like Moloch people worshiping Baal? I don't know. Maybe they're the ones hiding it. We'll talk. But or maybe it's just hidden from people by their own ignorance.
ignorance. And before we get into all that, I would also, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
want to talk about the fear part, right? Because so before we even discuss what those topics are and the meanings of the words, there's like a general fear associated with when people talk about the occult and the maybe even the esoteric. And I'm recapping what I said in the episode 1, but I grew up in a, you know, Christian church, which is pretty much a cult, but a cult, not occult.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it was forbidden, to look into topics that were taboo, things that were considered taboo and esoteric and occult or whatever would be things that I do now, like, read cards, you know, um, look into things and topics and read things that people wrote and people who are considered to be these like evil people in the world, like Aleister Crowley, for example. Like I'm reading a version of the Tao by, translated by Aleister Crowley himself. And, would I have dreamed that I would be doing that, you know, back when I was in that church? No. Um, but yes, it was some, it's like something that wasn't okay. And the way I see things now is that we should be able as living beings, as people, and I think this is what the I don't know, the Renaissance or the Enlightenment was about, was to actually think for yourself and not let some authority tell you what's best for you. Maybe if you want that, go. Like if you want some authority to tell you, that's your that's your desire, that's your choice. You can do that. But if you don't, and you want to look into things yourself and verify and validate and ensure that what you're being, what is being told to the world is really what it is, and or if it's not, then it's not. I think people should have that ability, right? And thankfully we do in this day. Um, so looking into stuff like this, there shouldn't be like a fear associated with it. But if there is, if you're afraid of looking into stuff, don't do it. You know what I mean? Like if you have that fear, then that fear is intrinsically in you, then don't do it. But if you're curious, you're open, you're like, I want to know what this is about, then yeah, read it for yourself, because that's how you will know, is if you read it and experience it for yourself. So I see a lot of these things, a lot of these topics as or at least the books written about them, the people that wrote them, like it's like we talk about a tool. It's a tool, and you can use it for good or you can use it for bad, but it's your choice, right? How you use it.
Yeah, exactly. The occult would fall under the description of being a tool. It could be. Now, again, this is something we should probably say up front too. Different people look at this different ways. Everyone's going to have their own definition of it, and it's going to mean something different to them. But we're just trying to shed some light on this, and maybe expose another one of these, like a good and evil, like a scale. It's just I don't know the word I'm looking for, but anywho, could it be, is the occult is a good thing or it's a bad thing? Should we put on a pedestal or demonize it? Or maybe it's just something.
Just is what it is,
Maybe
right?
it just is what it is. Yeah, there you go.
Um, so Kathleen says, I was recently sent a video of a bishop dressed in white advising that reading tarot cards and following astrology, also manifesting, opens you up to evil spirits. Hashtag sad. Well, if you believe that it does, then maybe it will. So maybe that bishop shouldn't be doing that. You know what I mean? It's like, if you believe that you're opening yourself up to demons, then you will be opening yourself to demons. So don't do it if you fear
Exactly.
that.
Yes, and that falls exactly what we're going to be talking about, that the occult stuff and esoteric stuff is just a tool, because yeah, it could be misused. Maybe some people shouldn't use the tarot deck because they're just looking for validation, and instead of getting it from a person, they're like, oh, what should I do today? Should I, and maybe they're a little nuts, which, I'm a little crazy, it's fine. But if they're lying to themselves a lot or whatever, and they're a little diluted, and they get a tarot deck, it could be bad for them. Now, overall, we're not saying it's bad or good. It's just the
It's
lessons
the
they have to
based on
learn.
the it's based on the intentions of the person.
Yeah, that it's also based on the intentions of the person. And we say either way, we're not going to judge people, whatever they're using it for. But I could see how this bishop or whatever could have a point to some degree for certain people,
For
you know,
himself
and
and
for
for
himself.
other
Yeah,
people.
exactly. For
Be-
himself and like his strict followers. But to make just a random statement that totally it's, that's like, all right, fella, like,
right. It's
what are you
it's like
scared about?
it's what we've talked about before in the top 10 Over Sharon tenets, that, you know, people like to tell you what you should do based on their own experience. And I don't think anybody can do that. They can tell you what worked for them as their own experience, but that doesn't mean it applies to everybody. There is no collective solution. So he can say, I personally wouldn't look into it because I think that it opens you up to demons, but that's my perspective. Right. But, you know, to each his own. Every person is going to have a different experience.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little, but it pretty much
Oh,
came
sorry.
through what you were
Shoot.
saying. And no, and to add to that, I would just say that, when we say that, maybe they would be open up to demons. And what we mean by that is just, really there's aspects of ourselves that we kind of repress and push down. And then I think that there's a way that they could come out and manifest kind of like a demon. And you can even look at it as, um, again, it's just an aspect of yourself, right? But you start to vibrate in a certain frequency. And so then you kind of we've talked about this before, you evacuate your cockpit, right? And you get kind of taken over and you just end up in front of the refrigerator, and you don't even know how you got there. Like, how did I end up in front of the refrigerator? What's going on here, right? A lot of people can relate to that at some point in their life. So
Or
that's
like
what we're
driving a
talking about.
car.
Yeah, same thing. Driving a car, you kind of put on autopilot. So these aren't always bad things, right? But sometimes there's these impulses that your body just kind of does, like the flesh just does it. And then some people have described this as being like a demon or whatever. And I'm not saying that I agree with like the Judeo-Christian explanation of a demon, but I could see how this is like a crude explanation of it. And, you know, he could say, for me and my followers, you shouldn't look into this because if you have the worldview that I do and you believe in demons the way I do, these things are going to screw you up. And really, are they screwing them up? It's not even a bad thing. They're probably looking at this tarot deck and it's going to like teach them life lessons. And yeah, it's going to look maybe from the outside like suffering, but it's a dark night of the soul. You know, people are having this spiritual death and they're waking up and they're using the tarot cards. So to the outside, it could look terrible, but in the inside, you're clearing out all that old bullshit. You know, and it's not always a fun process, but at least you're letting it out and you're letting it see the light, kind of like the Knight of Wands was saying. So yeah,
Yeah. And this can apply to different things, you know. Yeah, I just used the occult topic of like the tarot cards or whatever. But you can apply this to other like things that, you know, some people might be like, oh, that's new agey or whatever. And like topics, for example, of like, let's say manifestation, right? Which, or what do some people call it? The law of attraction,
yeah,
stuff like that. And the thing is, these things do work. But again, your intention, is it your intention to use them for the desire, your like your desires, like your what is that called, Brandon? Just like you're just
like your
thinking
fleshly
your
desires.
fleshly desires, right? Or
Biblically.
is it for, is it non-egoic basically? So is it egoic or is it non-egoic?
Yeah. And
And
oh, go ahead.
yeah. So, you know, I I think this is a kind of an older topic, but I talked about how, and I'm not going to say I manifested it right, but the interesting thing was I did what Dwight Goddard said to do, and I met Cody that way. It like what I imagined in my head, which was like I never said it to anybody. Like he did it. I imagined, like I thought to myself, okay, what if I want to meet someone? If I finally am ready to meet the person that I want to be with, how would I imagine that happening? And I just imagined like something romantic, like a hug, like an embrace. And then I was like, you know what? Like maybe he lifts me or something. And I imagined that. And I imagined that like two or three times, like the week before I met, or like some days prior to meeting Cody. And when I met him, that's what he did. And I never said that to anybody. I never did, I never told anybody anything about this. And that's exactly what he did. And it was like my mind was blown, right? I wasn't, in my mind when I was thinking about it, wasn't like selfish and egoic. I was just like, you know what, God, I think I'm ready to meet this person, whoever this person is going to be. And I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be in a week or 2 months or a year or 2 years. I don't know. But I'm going to use this method that Dwight Goddard talks about just because, you never know. And lo and behold, within a week, it happened. So these things can happen, they work, but again, what is your intention? And is it for good or is it for evil? And when we say evil, it's more about egoic. Is it egoic? you
Yeah,
know
exactly. Yeah, that's a great story. I remember that. Shout out to
oh,
Kathleen,
sorry, I
Blue
didn't see
Katina,
other
Quiet
people.
Sparky Bear. No worries. Have a grand Thursday. Yes, you too. QSB. Uh, Dell, what's up, Cody? And Blue Kachin is kind of spoiling. He says, even with the best intentions, things can go in a way. Yes. Or awry also. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we're going to be talking about too, but we can mention it here at the beginning and then kind of build back to why we think this way. But there's also a way, I think it's more of a Taoist way where you kind of just be in the middle and you are open to what happens and
Mm-hmm.
you affect, you kind of we talk about not being a victim and internally, and you look at trying to not be a victim of what happens, and you always try to be positive and grateful and stuff like that. And now you could still take plenty of actions and do all these things, but you don't really have, you're not really trying to author your own story in a way. You're not like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this would be the best for me. This is what has to happen. You're just more open to what life brings. And I think as that happens, the things that you really need and that will work for you start to come into your life. Because there really is no way. It's just really like getting lost in the future when you try to
Mm-hmm.
map it out exactly. Now you can have an idea of what you like and you move in that direction and what makes you excited and all that stuff. But I think to try to actually sit and manifest for good or evil, and this is just a thought way that people come across. We're not saying this is the right way to do it or wrong way. If you figure out how to manifest and you're having a good time, let's do it. Uh
Yeah, and I don't think it's bad either way. You know, me personally, because of course I'm a Libra and I can see both sides. I can see all sides. So, even if you do end up, say, going the way of like, oh, I totally went down the rabbit hole of the stuff Aleister Crowley was looking into, which I personally don't even honestly know. But like, I went down this hole and I started manifesting and I got exactly what I wanted and XYZ. And what are you gonna find? You're gonna learn some lessons, I'm sure, you know. So it was it really bad for you? No, like you followed that desire, that thought pattern, that desire, that wish, and you made some connections and you realized some things. Maybe you learned something.
Maybe so. And when we talk about people like Aleister Crowley and all these people, another way to look at it, because he interpreted the Tao, he translated it, and we talk about that in our Tao series. Check that out. There's an entire playlist here on the Brandon Bonanza channel, here on YouTube. You can listen to Sharon and I break down each verse of the Tao. We're almost complete, so
Mhm.
check those out. But we do read four different versions, and one of them is by Aleister Crowley. And you could demonize him and stuff, and maybe he did terrible things. But when somebody does something to try to translate a religious text, it's not like, even if he tried to maybe dupe people or whatever. I think the way this realm works is it comes out in such a way where it's going to speak what it says, right? The only way to really to make it not do that is to make your own translation and kind of speak it to people. But when it's like written down, and it could be kind of tested against other things, and it's just saying the message, it's hard to put any kind of bad intentions or nefariousness into it. It's just going to come out
Yeah.
the way it is. It reminds me of, and I talk about this a lot too, when Ram Dass was talking about the Bhagavad Gita and giving the lecture, and he was talking to somebody about it, and he was worried. And the guy's like, "Don't worry." He's like, the Bhagavad Gita will teach itself in spite of you. Like it's gonna reach people how it's supposed to, no matter what. So you don't have to worry. Just do your best, and it's gonna come out.
Mhm.
And I feel like, with that, or even the tarot. So Aleister Crowley has his tarot deck too. Same thing. I think the art comes out in such a way, it's really, the interpretation is left up to the person. So in the same way, if people that make an argument about guns, where they're saying, it's not the guns, it's the people, guns are just a tool. It's the same thing. These symbols are there. Even the upside down pentagram, the way I look at it, is not an evil thing. It just represents people who put the material world, this materialistic dream, over the spirit. Which, when I say spirit, it's just, when you zoom into all these molecules, they're just energy dancing around. We're all energy. And that's really what I talk about with spirit. So when people put this stuff that they could touch and feel, what a lot of people in a lot of religions have called the illusion, when they put that as the primacy, or the primacy of matter, that's the most important thing. That's all that means. It just means that that's somebody's worldview and that's what they think. And if you're somebody who doesn't think that, like me, I think that spirit's more important. All you have to do is say, oh, maybe they're just lost, or they have a worldview, whatever. You don't have to judge them and say they're evil and they're out to get you and all this stuff. because most people in this society are that way. Because materialism is one of the largest religions, probably if not the biggest one that there is, the biggest deception. So
Holy
it's
smokes.
fine. We fall into it. We don't have to judge anybody. So it doesn't mean they're evil devil worshippers all the time. It just means that they're worried about tomorrow. That's really what it means.
Yeah. You know, when you were talking about the upside down pentagram, it made me think of an upside down person, maybe a hanged man, not per se, but you
Yeah.
know, you have the spirit, the head, right at the top of the regular pentagram, and you have the two arms, right? And then you have the two legs. But when you turn it upside down, the head's at the bottom and the feet are at the top. Um, and it made me think of the hanged man.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's, I was thinking the other day, we have 5 fingers and 5 toes, 5 appendages, the star, like it's all symbolic. And when you're upside down, sometimes it's good because you could see things. Now, when people talk about this society all the time, they say it's inverted. Well, yeah, it's the inverted pentagram. It's an upside down person looking at the world and they're just seeing it upside down. That's why a lot of these deceptions work so easily because it's just inverted. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing if you're not really paying attention. If you're worried about tomorrow more than you're in the present moment, then it's going to happen. That really is all it boils down to. I'm going to write a giant book and I'm just going to write really big in the middle. You have to get to it. And it's going to say, if you're worried about tomorrow, that's
And
the
then the
problem.
inside says what? And it'll
Yeah.
be like this thick.
Yeah.
Only the page in the middle has the text.
Yeah. Something like that.
Or one of those books that one of those boxes that looks like a book,
Oh, yeah.
and then it
Yeah.
opens and there's like
A
nothing
little
inside.
scroll and it just opens and it's like, if you're worried about tomorrow, you're doing it wrong. And listen, Sharon and I both worry about tomorrow sometimes.
We have our moments, you know?
So we're preaching to the choir again. We say this so we're not up here going, this is what you must do. Because I think that's what this life is all about. It's about trying to hit the mark. And if you miss, it's okay. And we say this all the time, and I'm going to keep saying it. It's like if you miss and you're hard on yourself, you're just starting that cycle. So just be easy. Be easy, man.
Indeed.
What would
But
Easy E do?
what
So,
would what?
oh, I said, what would Easy E do? It was a rapper from NWA. Be easy like Easy E. Don't be frigid like Ice Cube. Come on, Ice Cube. Why are you so frigid? It's in your name. All right. I do that. I
I
talk to stoplights like that. I'm like, come on, stoplight. You know you want to change. Go green. Why are you so red? You embarrassed up there, stoplight? You know everyone's going green. You know you want to go green. Yeah, it's my way of dealing with a red light.
It ain't easy being green,
It ain't easy being green, but light, you
says
can do it. I
Kermit the
believe
Frog.
you. Go green, light. Everyone's doing it. You embarrassed up there all red. Don't be embarrassed. Be yourself. All right. Yes.
So I was going to ask you because we have the two words exoteric and esoteric written in the title. So I wanted you to kind of talk about those two words.
Yeah. Well, the simple definition of those two words, or the difference is really it's the inner and outer that we've been talking about this entire episode because the card that you pulled was amazing. And that's what we're talking about, the inner and the outer. The esoteric is more of the inner world, the spiritual, the way to look at the worldview from the spiritual way. That's the esoteric. And a lot of times it has to do with self-work, and all these symbols that you see, the pentagram, for example, there's an esoteric meaning and an exoteric meaning. So what's the exoteric? It's the outside. It's like a sun sign in astrology. It's what's for the masses, for everybody, for society, generally. And people, there's always like a distinction between people who are like awake and people who are like still sleeping in society, whatever. That would be the exoteric. And that symbolism is everywhere. And when you first wake up to it, you could be like, oh my God, this is terrible. It's nefarious, all this stuff. Well, I think sometimes it just manifests because people are drawn to it. If you go to build a symbol, if you go to a website and try to build a symbol for your or a logo, sorry, if you're gonna go build a logo for your company, make sure first you go to morelawsmoreproblems.com and give us money, and then go build your logo because we don't have promo codes. I'm just kidding. So anyway, that's my real website, everyone. It really is. So it just comes out because it attracts people. So if you go to build a logo, you're going to see the stars and all these different triangles and different things and circles and these patterns that attract people. Now, is this evil and these people know what they're doing? And do they hire evil occultists to work on the payroll? Or is it just what comes out? It could be a little bit of both, right? Sometimes the people employ psychologists and stuff for this. So I think it's kind of a mixture, but anyway, that's the exoteric, what's out there where people aren't really aware of, kind of they're just being drawn to things and they're not really sure. Now we obviously we exist in both realms when we're talking about you as a single person or me. But when we're dealing in topics and we're talking about them as the occult, so if we're going to say, oh, we're going to talk about the occult today, but we're going to be talking about it in an esoteric way, what we mean is we're going to use the knowledge and the symbols of the occult and all this information and secret and hidden stuff. We're going to use it in such a way to
Talk
to
about the
realize that,
spiritual.
yeah, and we realize we're not victims, right? We're going to use it in a way to work on ourselves, to make ourselves better, to be more grateful and all these things, and to see inspiration and synchronicities in the world. That's what we mean now in the exoteric. And now esoteric, you could still refer to this as manifestation, and you could say we're going to talk about the occult esoterically, and we're going to manifest. But I think more that's stuff lies in the exoteric because it's behind this mystique and mystery of what is the occult, and it's scary to some people, and some people it's what they live by. It's really kind of putting it on a pedestal in a way, or a pit. It's looking at in the polarity. It's good and evil. That's the exoteric in the outside. That's more of the physical, and again, there's nothing wrong with it. So today we're going to be really talking more about the esoteric stuff, and then of course, we're going to have to touch on the exoteric and where the fear comes from and stuff like that. But that's really, I think, the main distinction,
Yeah.
those two words.
And what I also was going to say is the words occult and esoteric are by many people used interchangeably. So somebody might say, oh, blah, 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 the occult. And some people might say, oh, blah, 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 the esoteric. And to them, it's like kind of the same thing. And the people in the circles that I'm talking about, people like Manly P. Hall, who wrote a lot of very occult and esoteric, wrote on a lot of occult and esoteric topics. It's not that he wrote on evil and scary and like demonic things. He was writing about the hidden symbology of the world. And it's not that it's hidden because um, it's hidden from you by these masters of evil who are
George Staroth.
who are hiding it from you so you don't know, or and maybe they are, right?
Oh.
Okay, maybe there are people like that, but that's not what we are talking about. It's more hidden because people don't necessarily know about it, don't want to know about it. Like Brandon said, the ignorance part. um it's they're materialistic, they're not even looking into the spiritual, so their world is surrounded by materialism. There's no way they're going to even be drawn into the deeper topics of spirituality, which include these little known. That's what really esoteric and occult is. It's little known. It's not known by the masses or the public. So um I just wanted to make that little
And
clarifying point.
one last note I can give about esoteric and exoteric, a way you could see it in the world per se, or out, an example of it would be a church. So like the Catholic Church. Now you have the exoteric, which is what I was raised in, Catholic Church, went to Catholic school for 9 years, 10 years, 10 years, and up till ninth grade, but kindergarten, couldn't forget about that. Kindergarten. So you have the priest, the pope, the mass, all this stuff, right? But then there's this wing of esoteric Christianity. I forget what else could be called, but there are people,
Mysticism, mystical
mysticism.
Christianity.
There's people sometimes in bigger churches that will be a deacon or whatever, but then they're also into this other stuff. And you also get some of these saints that are crossovers too, like Saint Francis probably, and who's
Maybe even
another?
Origin. I don't know much about it, but I feel
Yeah,
like he's come
Thomas
up
A.
in some.
Kempis, which everyone always,
Aquinas?
no, everyone talks about Thomas
Oh,
Aquinas, but Thomas A. Kempis is
oh,
another,
okay.
and he's more mystical in his writings and stuff. So, and the thing is, it fits in, right? So it's this hidden message that's in there for people who wake up, and sometimes it's people that just have a near that death experience or whatever. Who knows? Maybe they eat a mushroom they found on the ground, and they're like, "Whoa!" Or they come across some dirty hippie that looked like he died for the sins. Not me because I'm a heathen, not a hippie. But and they're just like mind blown. Like, what was his name? Peter, right? No, who's the one on the road? Saul,
Yeah.
right? And then oh my God,
Paul.
I saw Jesus.
Yeah. And then he turns into Paul.
Then yeah, then he got rid of that SC snake. Got he's got a nice P. You get a P, men, Jesus. Anyway, the society. Anyway, so he's now Paul because he had this come to Jesus moment. Literally, am I right, everyone?
Yeah.
So I think that's what happens, and it's hidden in there, and some people get it. And when you truly, really get it, you understand it isn't for everybody. It's only for people who want to do it because it's really to try to get other people to work on themselves and to suggest it and to try to push it on people. It could be viewed as um what's the right word, like uh
Pushy?
yeah, just because the work, think about, dear listener, think about the work that you do and how hard it is sometimes and all this stuff that comes up. Like, you're asking somebody else to go down the dark night of the soul rabbit hole. Like, you're asking someone else to get on that dark that ship and go across the river Styx. So you're really asking a lot of them. So I think that in this, I'm talking to myself again too, everybody, don't
Yeah.
worry, I'm not just up here preaching.
Or like Jesus said, to die to yourself.
Yeah, and then you just
Or did
work
he
out
say that? I don't know
more
if
on
that's a
yourself.
quote from him, but
And it's like a good practice because when these things, like, you hear someone talking, you're like, oh, they're just projecting. Instead of saying it, you just think to yourself, all right, they're projecting, but why do I have a problem with it? It's all right, they'll figure it out. It's just things like that. And if they ask you, then yeah, sure. But if they're not asking you, remember what we said about unsolicited advice, everybody? That's one of the Over Sharon no-nos, right? Right. We try. So anywho, that's really what we're talking about. So people realize this in the esoteric, right? In the church, it might be a bishop or a deacon or whoever it is, or just a guy who goes to church. He wakes up, and then that's also what the Masons can be. Sometimes
Mhm.
you have Freemasonry that goes hand in hand with churches, and then even inside the Freemasonry,
You have exoteric ones and esoteric ones.
yeah, sometimes you have. And I had a friend that was into it, and he was into the esoteric and all this stuff, and most of the people there were just having like a hangout drinking spot, which, chilling out, which is cool, meant to hang out and talk, whatever. So it's the same thing. You get these fractals and bubbles inside it and stuff, but everybody still learns the symbolism and all that. So they kind of are bettering themselves. And the people who are just the exoteric, they're bettering the exoteric in the environment around them. And whatever. Maybe there's evil ones and they're fucking wah, but it is what it is. So that's just an example. That's what I'm saying, and I wanted to use the church for that. So yeah,
Absolument.
cool.
Well, if you had anything else to say about it, we can talk about it, or I can open this book called Origins of the Tarot that I was reading and we can
Yeah,
take a gander.
I'm just gonna look at the chat really quick.
Yeah, sure.
Blue Katina, yeah, I spread out a hand woven rug that reminds me of it. Grandma made it for me. Oh, maybe
It's my mandala.
the mandala. But it's too badass to occult. Yeah, exactly. I like what you did there with that use of the word. Oh, and that's the final thing I'll say to the occult. Remember, there's verbs in a noun. You can use it as a verb, like this information has been occulted, or a noun, the occult.
Mhm.
So there's still like a distinction.
Or
And
an
I just say,
adjective.
Yeah, this is occulty. This cult is getting occulty. Yeah, no.
Like occult knowledge or occult
Wisdom.
symbolism or occult wisdom.
For sure.
Yeah. So, ready for me to share?
Let's do it.
All
Share
right.
on.
Share and share alike.
My Sharona. I should say Cody Sharona.
You know what's
I made a song for you guys.
yeah. The first time I ever heard someone call me that was when I
Oh,
was in college. I was a student worker at one of the buildings, the information technology building, and my boss called me. Well, he would say that he would sing that song, and I didn't even know the song at all. I was like, I don't even know what he's talking about.
that's funny.
That's how sheltered I was.
Yeah. Oh
um,
man.
but all
Anyway.
right, well, here we go. Um, do you want to start? Maybe read
Yeah.
from here to this yellow bit here.
Yeah. So the questioner dwells at a station where the change comes most easily. Okay.
Well, you don't. Well,
All
that's
right.
describing a tarot card on the other page, but
Oh, all right. It just looked cool to read. I didn't.
okay.
I want. Oh, the questor, not questioner, questor. All right. So few people in the Western world have not heard of or seen reference to the tarot cards. All right. So of course that has changed because I mean everything in society
Yeah.
is just changing so rapidly. But it's cool, man. We're at the fun times. Remember, expert level. All right. So invariably, the pack is associated with the occult practices or with occult practices. The history of what is commonly associated with the occult is long and varied. It encompasses tribal rituals, magical cults, mythical beliefs, inscrutable revelations, fantastic claims of divinity, orgies, drug taking, and dangerous experiments in alchemy. Yes, where do we sign up? It's the pyramid scheme, guys. It's all part of it. It is important we distinguish between occult beliefs and forms of spiritual esotericism as they
Mm.
exist in the great traditions, i.e., Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Judaism, sorry, Neoplatonism, Christianity, Islam, etc. We will reserve later chapters for much of our discussion regarding this. For now, the following may suffice to help clarify these terms. In every great spiritual tradition, there are exoteric or outward forms of representing uh, communion
Communion.
and ultimately unity with the divine. And there are esoteric or inward forms of representing such. Understanding esoteric transmissions or conveyance, meaning communicative logic involving intuition and spiritual awareness, requires one to be actually undergoing processes of spiritual realization. This most efficiently occurs via in
Effectively.
oh, this most effectively occurs via initiation and
In.
yeah, let me try that again. I was going too fast. Sorry. This most effectively occurs via initiation in and conscious self authentication of teachings and practices transmitted by those who have already trod the path of such realization. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, dude, that's already saying a lot.
Yeah, it's really kind of just what we were saying, this stuff gets passed down to people who are into it. And then other people are like, yeah, I get this stuff. And it's funny how all this stuff it's passed down in the same way trauma could be passed down. This stuff is just passed down um uh from generation to generation and all this stuff. Anywho. No, I like it. It's really good.
Yeah. I had a thought, but it slipped my mind. So I
Oops.
will keep reading. I will start here. Occult teachers. Okay, so before I say this, let me just say that the way this author is writing this book, he's using the word occult for like kind of the negative aspect, and he's using the word esoteric, from what I can see here. He's using the word esoteric in the kind of the positive aspect. Um, as in occult would be the egoic side. So I'll just keep reading. Occult teachers claim to know unique ways of power hidden from or within the great traditions. The word occult literally means concealed. In our definition, with sincere apologies to readers who identify with the occult under a broad definition while genuinely adhering to a non dual worldview, occultists view the world in dualistic terms: light versus dark, true self escaping a fallen world, control or be controlled. So, in other words, they're very egoic about it. Okay, he's about to say it. Dualism sets a stage for belief in separative, egoic power. This readily leads to acts of dishonest concealment and claims that secrets of the supernatural are not comprehensible to common humanity, but are to occultists. This sounds very egoic, right?
Yeah, it's kind of inverted too. That's all, really. It's not even.
Yeah. An occultist will purposefully remain egoically separate or spiritually alienated in order to build powers hidden from others. And like I can see how like sometimes this like new agey stuff can be like that, right? Like
Yeah.
it might try to be like, oh, we're better because we know this. I'm not saying everybody's like that, but it could be that some people are like this. This tends to reinforce schizophrenia, not holistic love. Spiritual psychology needs to develop as integral psychology if it is not to become sick or unconsciously demonic. Ego mind, identifying with the occult, readily believes it is greater, smarter, and beyond the yogis, the saints, the sages who know otherwise. Authentic esoteric traditions require self surrender and devotion to a spiritual heritage. See the disparity here, right? Here's the change. Esoteric knowledge is not concealed per se, for it arises through a view of the world as it essentially, vitally, and really is. Don't we always say that? It is what it is.
Yeah.
Anyone may see this if she simply opens her eyes and looks beyond the view of her own self. Looking beyond the self, however, requires surrendering attention to a greater one with a capital O. Culture, community, and law are the traditional agencies for abetting this. As an example, a genuine hermeticist will directly perceive into and reasonably translate an internal alchemical manual. It will make immediate sense in the context of an authentic practice. A hermetic occultist, on the other hand, after laborious troubles, will construe meanings in a confused manner, believing he is deciphering arcane analogies that cannot be clearly stated for, quote, mysterious reasons, as if true mystery does not embrace and grow from actual reason. Even Isaac Newton, under the consumption of mercury fell into this trap. And I'll just read this little thing that belongs to one of the, it is a really old tarot card from what I think is the one of the oldest tarot decks that has been found, and they call it the um, Metropolitan um, Budapest because it's in the Metropolitan Museum in Budapest.
Oh,
But yeah, this is card in this deck. It was card number 3. It says the ego perceives its own confusion. The presence of a larger whole cannot be avoided. It is best to allow grace to show the direction.
wow. It's like it's talking about normies. Like you're a normie, you're part of the normies. Like just because they're sheeple, like we're all connected, right? It's like the presence of a larger whole cannot be avoided. Boom.
Mm,
The ego perceives its own confusion, which means the ego is, causing your confusion, which again, there's nothing wrong with the ego. We're going to talk about that. It is best to allow grace to show the direction. Yeah, and that's what we talked about with this whole occult stuff. In the Taoist way, right? The middle way, you're kind of just seeing what happens, right? Wait and see, and you go with it. And again, it's nuanced because this could be used to be, just wait and see while I hook up with all your wives, says the crazy cult leader, right? It's fine, just wait and see, but we're gonna, no, it's inside. You wait and see. Things happen. You're not like have all these expectations, and then when things go wrong, you're like, oh darn, and that's I think what they're talking about. And another thing I wanted to bring up, let's see if I can remember. I
While
think,
you think about it, can I
yeah, go ahead,
mention
please
what I
do.
was remembering? I'll share the screen again just for the reference. So, in this section here, it's talking about understanding esoteric transmissions or conveyances requires one to be actually undergoing processes of spiritual realization.
Yeah,
This most effectively occurs via initiation, blah, blah, blah. So, this reminds me of gnosis, and reminds me of like, you can't explain something to someone, like, don't cast your pearls to swine. Like, when you've experienced something spiritual like that, like a spiritual change of sorts, for lack of a better term, you can't always explain that to someone. And the person who will understand you is probably the person who's already been through it. And that's probably the only person who, or people who will understand or comprehend what you're talking about. So, that's why the Tao says things like, those who know don't speak, and those who speak don't know. Um, that's what that reminded me of.
yeah, it's remain silent. I sent this thing to Sharon yesterday. She probably listened a few minutes. It was very repetitive, so I think she got the first. It was a 20-minute clip, but in the first 5 minutes he got it all. They added a more, but there was one part though when the guy was like, "Stop oversharing," and I was like, and again, this is just a C.S. Lewis thing on that channel clip. He was just talking about basically where if somebody either disagrees with you or questions your motives, he's saying it's like they're demons, right? You're not really dealing with people, you're dealing with principalities and demons. In that reference that we talked about earlier, you can even say it's just aspects of themselves. And how he broke it down, he's like they're sucking your energy, and it really reminded me of energy vampires, how they kind of suck your energy when you're trying to convince somebody. And we always say that the truth needs no defense. It'll stand on its own. So you could just kind of feel the way you do about things and go about life. And if you see someone that's into it, cool, talk about it, share your experiences. You could talk about your spiritual growth and journey with someone who's interested in it. Maybe they're a little behind you. It's kind of how the Over Sharon show started. Not that I'm better or whatever, but Sharon was just interested in these topics, and I had recently been studying them. So we're like, hey, let's talk about it, and then why don't we just record it and share it with other people? And here we are.
Yeah,
So,
three and a half years
uh,
later.
3.5 years, still over Sharon.
I gotta say, listen to episode 1 and 1.1, and as much as I've learned so much and grown in the last 3.5 years. I I'm not too like I don't feel like I said anything that I wouldn't necessarily take it back. It's just where I was, and those were the thoughts I was having at the time. And some of them there's probably still similar.
And I think a lot of that large part is because we weren't really making claims, and we were always conscious to not make claims. So it really holds up, because even if some of the things we were saying were off or whatever, I think we were always like, this is how we see it, or this is what we think. It's not a
Yeah,
claim. So it's nice. I think that's another way to look at it. Those who know don't talk. So we don't know anything. We're just talking.
indeed. Um, Kathleen said, "What about the liminal?" But I don't know what she means. I asked her to explain. Do you know what she would mean by that? Like the in between,
Yeah, perhaps.
but
And
in
maybe
between of like what?
Yeah, maybe she can explain it. It sounds like I should know, but
Yeah, it's okay. I do have another little set of things to read.
yeah.
All right. Is it okay to read it now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I'm opening up this book called The Initiates of the Flame. It's a little book. I say little because it's not very long. And very, very synchronistically, I read this part this morning. So I was like, dude, I gotta share this. It is too uh synchronistic and too apropos. So it is by none other than Manly P. Hall. Um, I found reference to this book in another book about him or by him. I can't remember. But I was like, you know what? Let me see what that book says. And I didn't realize how short it was. I'm like, oh, this will be a quick read. So anyway, here we are. The Mystery of the Alchemist. There are very few occult students. And so here he's using the word occult in just a very general sense, like we talked about. It's not like he's using it in a bad way. He's just talking about the study, the inner work that we talk about. There are very few occult students today who have, and this is, mind you, this is in the 19, I'm going to guess like the 1920s or something, because he was very young when he wrote this, um, who have not heard of the alchemist, but there are very few who know anything about the strange men who lived during the Middle Ages and concealed under chemical symbolism the story of the soul. Mind you, as I read this, maybe there's things that you wouldn't agree with, or you'd be like, oh, that's not true. And, blah, 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 blah. But, just take it with a grain of salt. At a time when to express a religious thought was to court annihilation at the stake or wheel, they labored silently in underground caves and cellars to learn the mysteries of nature, which the religious opinions of their day denied them the privilege of doing. Right?
It sounds familiar. No.
Let us picture the alchemist of old, deep in the study of natural lore. We find him among the test tubes and retorts of his hidden laboratory. Around him are massive tomes and books by ancient writers. He is a student of nature's mystery and has devoted years, lives maybe, to the work he loves. His hair has long since grayed with age. By the light of his little lamp, he reads slowly and with difficulty the strange symbols on the pages before him. His mind is centered upon one thing, and that is the finding of the philosopher's stone. With all the chemicals at his command, and if you need to stop me and talk about something, let me know, okay?
Will do.
Their various combinations thoroughly understood, he is laboring with his furnace and his burners to make of the base materials the philosopher's gold. At last, he finds the key and gives to the world the secret of the Gilead's balm and the immortal stone. From them, he makes the philosopher's stone. From them, he extracts the elixir of life. With their power, he transmutes the base metals into gold. The world laughs at him, but he goes on in silence. In silence? Holy smokes.
Whoa.
Did we just talk about that?
Silence.
Oops, sorry.
Silence is golden, right?
There it is. It's golden, philosopher's gold.
Yeah.
Uh, but he goes on in silence, actually doing the very things the world believes impossible, right? A lot of people don't want to do the hard work, the self work, because
Yeah, let's
they
just break
find
it
it.
down to what we think they're saying, right? So we could spell it out for people. You could X off this for just a second and then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so on the outside to people looking in, it looks like this fantasy tale. This guy is like a crazy chemist and he's making lead into gold and all this stuff. But as that's the exoteric. Now the esoteric is he's working on himself. He's transforming his consciousness, if you will, these base metals, the way he looked at things. So he looked at
The base chakra, the red chakra, which is what the red and the orange, which are
The root
the
and
sorry, the
sacral
root and the
and
sacral.
sacral.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or the other, yeah.
The base desires of the flesh.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then now he's looking at the world in another way and he has more gratitude. So instead of being in a hell of his own making, he's now in a heaven because of the way he just lets things roll off his back and all these things. So, and the world laughs at him. So this is great. He's like a fool, right? Like a comedian. So people laugh and then people also laugh because they can't quite get it and they're like, they have to laugh, right?
To not
So,
cry.
yeah, to not laugh now, cry later. That's it has a lot of that to it. And yeah, and he's silent. He keeps his mouth shut like we were just saying. It's perfect. I love it.
Yeah. Kathleen's talking about something in the chat. I'm just gonna ask her, so did you say wow because it just is, and I read something that said that? I read something about that, right? That something just is. Anyway.
Oh yeah, it is to come. It's the place of transition, uncertainty, and transformation. It isn't good or bad, it just is. Yeah, so it reminds me a lot of like the idea of the present moment,
Mm,
gray area. Yeah, that's
yeah.
really what we're talking about here. It's like the idea of a gray Jedi in Star Wars, which I guess only exists in the video games, but it's this idea that I've talked about for years now, where Luke Skywalker is really the chosen one because he like went his own way. He didn't listen to Yoda. He went to save his friends at the Cloud City. He left Dagobah. And he wasn't like the Jedi in the prequel where they're all good and they can't have attachments and they're like monks, right? And then the Sith are just all evil, like like they just have to do everything they do, like even when it's really well uh illustrated in Spaceballs how terrible Rick
I
Moranis
need
just
to
is just
watch
like
that. Yeah.
you've seen that or you haven't?
No, I need to. It's been on our list.
You
Maybe,
have to
maybe,
watch Spaceballs. You're gonna
maybe
go
tonight.
crazy. Especially if you've seen all the other like, Star Wars and Dune and stuff like that. It's just
Yeah,
I just
I
want
will.
you to remember to comb the desert. All right. There's just that part. We
Okay.
ain't found shit. All right. Anyway, so there's racism in the movie. It's great because, you know, I don't look at it as a bad thing, but everybody's allowed to make fun of everybody. They make fun of white people, black Jews, Anyway, so space, they make fun of Luke Skywalker. So yeah, the gray areas. I think that's kind of where it's like the in between. You're just flowing with it. You're not pushing away the bad or the good. You're just seeing it as it is. So thank you. Great point there,
Present moment. Yeah,
Kathleen.
absolutely.
Oh, I said wow to your silence is golden. Oh yeah, thank you. Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I
So,
do. I make these connections. There's um I made this other connection. There's this road that we drive down. It's kind of like a dirt road and not many people go down it. And there's a field and there's like a mound. And I keep thinking it's like a temple. It's like this long just hill in the grass. And so we were driving by the other day and it's like near Upson or Upson Road or whatever. And I'm thinking of Upson and I'm driving and I'm like, Upson, up sun, sun up, sun up. I'm like, maybe it's a temple of Ra, like a sun temple, sun up
mm,
as opposed to set.
mm.
Yeah, so all these things, that's more the esoteric, right? You're following your intuition and you're looking into these things and keeping yourself in the present moment in the liminal. Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to reference it.
Yeah, I like it too. I had heard of the liminal space more in reference to the dream state, where not
Oh,
the
like
dream state, I should say the space between the waking and the dream state. That's what I've heard the word liminal used for,
yeah.
the space between. But yeah,
Um,
shall I continue?
yeah, and to because Kathleen says yes in the occult reading when the author describes dualism, that caused me to ask about the liminal. Yeah, exactly. That's why the dualism, it's more of a scale spectrum, I guess, right? Where there is a middle, it is what it just is. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
look, she's got the award. Yeah. The golden trophy. Let's just be quiet.
Silence is golden, but We overshare on the Over Sharon show.
That's what we do. You can
Um,
have all the silence later when we're done.
Absolutely. You have almost a whole week of silence before we come back. Just a couple hours shy of silence. All right. So we were here. After many years of labor, he takes his little lamp and silently slips away into the great unknown. That reminds me of the hermit, right? The hermit
Oh
card.
yeah.
No one knows what he has done or the discoveries that he has made, but he, with his little lamp, still explores the mysteries of the universe. I would say that be exploring himself, like knowing self, right? Know thyself.
The inner
Yeah.
space, the inner world, the esoteric again.
Mm-hmm. As the close of the 15th century clouded him with mystery, so the dawn of the 20th century is crowning him with the glory of his just reward. Remember, this was written like 100 years ago, guys. For
100.
the
Sorry.
right,
Yeah, I like to say 100.
yeah.
My wife loves it when I say it that way. She's like, "What?" I'm like, "100." I'm sorry, man. 100 years ago in the 20th century. Do you guys remember the 20th century?
Wow.
We'll
Yeah.
talk about funny. All right, go ahead.
So the dawn of the 20th century is crowning him with the glory of his just reward, where the world is beginning to realize the truths he knew and to marvel at the understanding which his years of labor earned for him. Man has been an alchemist from the time. This is a great quote here, and I wanted to actually quote this at some point, but here we are. So we're going to quote it here.
Here we is. Let's do it.
Man has been an alchemist from the time when he first raised himself and with the powers long latent pronounced himself as human. This is the part here. Experiences are the chemicals of life which the philosopher is experimenting with. I
Yeah.
mean, ponder that.
And does it say negative or does it say positive experiences?
It just
Does it
says
say negative?
experiences.
It just says
Yeah,
experiences. And that's what I think some people
all of them.
understand. And this doesn't give anyone a license to go out and just wreak mayhem. What it means is you don't have to be a victim of the craziness you see in the world, right? You're just like, okay, people are having their experiences to learn. I'm just gonna make my experiences the ones I want, or go with them. But you don't have to point the finger. Is really what we're saying. And it could take you a while to get there. Some people get lost and they just keep pointing the finger, and it feels good. And that's why we say, if people are pointing the finger and they're having a good time, don't be that buzzkill. Just chill. Just hang out with them. It doesn't matter. Jesus hung out with the sinners and the saints, right? You can hang out with people, and it doesn't matter if they're, you know, if you could diagnose exactly what's wrong with them perfectly. And I could just sit down and show them. No, good luck. Just have a good time. Hear what they have to say. Maybe they have some wisdom they could share with you about your life that you can't see because you have a blind spot. Just kidding, everybody. Here we
I'll just keep reading. Nature is the great book whose secrets he seeks to understand through her own wondrous symbolism. His own spiritual flame is the lamp by which he reads, and without this, the printed pages mean nothing to him. I'll
Yeah,
finish. You want to
that
keep gonna
reminds me of
say
the line in
something?
the Bhagavad Gita that talks about the texts, the spiritual texts, and all the religious texts being like water on the floodplain to a person who
Mm-hmm.
already gets it. If you get it, you don't need it, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Similar though.
I'll finish up
Yeah,
just
please
that
do.
last little bit. So it says, his own body is the furnace in which he prepares the philosopher's stone. See, it says
The
body.
inside, the
Mm.
esoteric, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
His
Go
sense and organs are the test tubes,
ahead.
and incentive is the flame from the burner.
Ooh.
Salt, yeah, Salt, sulfur, and mercury are the chemicals of his craft.
Oh,
According to the ancient philosophers, salt was the salt, the salt was of the earth, earthy. Sulfur was a fire, which was spirit, while Mercury was only a messenger, like the winged Hermes of the Greeks, whose color is purple, which is the blending of the red and the blue of the spirit and the red of the body.
oh, yeah, and true alignment, right? We talk about that too. Mm, good stuff.
Yeah. So,
I have a
does
couple notes
anybody
here,
have?
unless there's something else you wanted to
No, go
talk
ahead.
about that. So, I did want to talk about the ego because I kept saying we're talking about that later.
Yeah, yeah.
And the way we look at it, and you could go back and several Over Sharon episodes. I do recommend, especially if you're new. Hey, if you're new to the show, thank you for sticking around so long. We are glad to have you, and make sure you go and check out some of those old episodes. Go to morelawsmoreproblems.com if you want to find us. You click on the Over Sharon tab over at that lovely website, and you can find us in audio form. And there's several ways to support us too, but that's the way to find us. But we always say the best way to support us is to hang out here on Thursdays every time we go live or premiere and hang out in the chat because you guys are the greatest, best chat on the internet. But what started me off on that tangent was in that commercial was how we talk about the ego, where it's really we look at it as just a tool. Now, some people, if you're stuck heavily in materialism and you're in that frame of mind and you're coming out of it, you could see the ego as evil and terrible and you want to destroy it. And there's a lot of new age stuff that talks about it. And what we have found is that it really is just a balance. The ego is what allows you to operate in this physical world and to talk to people and to have any kind of sense of like individualism, individuality, individualism, individuality, but then there's another side, which is the intuition, and it's more of the creative. And it really goes back to what Sharon just said about the red and the blue making the purple. You can have this balance with the ego and the intuition, and you don't have to let one rule the other. But sometimes, if you come out, like I said, of the whole materialism thing and you're stuck in your ego, maybe you do have to spend a little more time with the intuition. But what we're saying is kind of do what feels right, and out of all these balances comes a balance inside. So that's really how we kind of feel about the ego, and that's what meditation helps with and stuff. But then you can meditate too much, perhaps, could it be, and get stuck in non-action. There's all these fun, uh I don't want to say pitfalls, but there's all these fun little traps you have to avoid, and that's really what the spiritual work is about. um And the other thing I wanted to talk about, unless you had something you wanted to say about that, I know that's kind of how we look at the ego. But is there anything you wanted to add or?
Um, I do have something to say. I don't know if it's exactly related, but
Oh yeah, go ahead.
so I was going to say too, when you're on this path, on this journey, you're going to find invariably that you will probably like swing on this little pendulum of, you know, oh, I used to be this way and I don't like it. It was horrible and it's ugly and now I'm this way and I hate this other stuff, you know, and I would say that that's probably because you can't forgive yourself. And the thing is, it's okay. There's nothing wrong. You're okay. You're where you're at. You had to experience all those things for whatever reason. You went down those rabbit holes for whatever reason. You did what you did for whatever reason, and now you can just learn from it. So it's okay also to be swinging to the other side, right? That's okay too. But just know that that will probably happen, and in order to not maybe feel so um, guilty or angry at yourself for those kinds of things. Um, you can forgive yourself. You can look at it and realize that it all happened for a reason and it's okay. Can you add to that? Because I feel like I'm not, I don't know if I
No,
said
yeah,
that
you
all
could
very well.
definitely add to it because I could make it fold into exactly what I was going to talk about. And it seems like it's pretty synchronistic, but really forgiveness, self-forgiveness is just an acceptance. Really, forgiveness is an acceptance. It's like grief. Grief is just not accepting. It's you feel suffering, feeling grief. What ends that is when you accept it. You get angry, you deny, you get angry, you bargain, all these steps, and then finally we accept it. So it's about accepting all the aspects of yourself. In this note that I had, because it was something I was thinking about the other day, where how we talk about Myers-Briggs and there's four sides of the mind, and somebody has you have like the analogy we like to use is you have the driver and the passenger and the people in the back seat, right? The four sides of the mind, and the driver's like kind of like your sun sign also if you look at astrology. But if you take it all as a whole, that's who you are. All those four people, and you can even break it up into others, come back to one, and that one makes up you. You are all of those things. So if there's a aspect of yourself that you're saying that's not me, that's you have some thoughts and you're like, oh, that's not. And again, if you're doing meditation, you realize that your thoughts are, you can let them go, so that helps too. But in whatever these impulses, you're like, oh, that's and you push it down and you demonize it. It's just like putting it in the pit instead of the pedestal. And your good behavior that you do, I go to work and I do these things and I make people laugh and everyone's cool and I'm a nice guy. That's what you're putting on the pedestal. If you can learn to accept it, I think there's a merge that happens with all these different personalities. And if you become really who you are, maybe it's a spot you can exist. I don't know, you have to be in some meditative samadhi state. I'm not sure. Or maybe through doing self work and just accepting it, that's who you are. And guess what? Sometimes you're a jerk and an asshole, and sometimes you're really cool and you have a good time. But I think if you just kind of allow yourself to be who you are and accept it as it comes, this stuff happens a lot quicker. And then I don't know. And it's about the negative stuff too, where you kind of accept it. It doesn't mean you always have to fulfill every impulse or desire that you have. That's not what I'm saying. But instead of pushing it away, you could say, oh, well, maybe I have this impulse to pick my nose because, hey, it's easier my finger's the size of my nose. I could just stick it in there. Why wouldn't I do it? You could say that to yourself. It doesn't mean you have to pick your nose. You could just say, oh, I understand why I'd want to do it. And you could pretty much do that with any habit or negative behavior that you have. I drink too much or whatever. I smoke or whatever. Well, maybe it's self-soothing because the day I had is crazy and I just need to, whatever. And that's why I do it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a coping mechanism that I'm using for now. Doesn't mean that I'm always going to do this. Voila. If you keep saying that to yourself, that's a form of way to accept it. And again, we're not telling you how to live or what to do, but that's what we're really talking about, this acceptance. So I know that's kind of a long-winded way to put it, but we're over sharing here. But I think that's really what it comes down to.
So something you just said made me think this book that I listened to. I finally finished listening to it. It's called Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe. And I don't know that I've mentioned it yet. And maybe I have. I think I have. Um,
Yeah, you have.
it is it is quite mind-blowing to listen to that book. So if anybody ever has a chance to read it or listen to it, it'll give you so many views on just everything that's related to like out of body experience. Anyway, um it made me okay, it's what it made me think of. So he talked about a lot of things, but at one point he said something that you reminded me of. So he was talking about like when at some points he would go out of body, right? He would like be in his like almost like a sleep state, like lying down, whatever. And then he would experience like that he was outside of his body. Well, he was talking in the book how certain things will come up for you. And one of the things that comes up the most is like desire to, uh, a sexual desire for union. And the thing was, he said when the first time it happened to him, he was like wanting to push it down and like he was like, oh crap, I can't like I have to get back into my body because whatever. So he would get back into his body. And the thing was like in the out of body experience, he was feeling that, but like when he'd get back into his body, he wasn't necessarily feeling that way. It was only like when as soon as he would get into the out of body experience. Um, but the way he realized he could counter that, and that's the interesting part, is he he said at one point it happened again, and he was just like, you know what? I acknowledge that I have this feeling, and I'm just going to come back to it. Like tell the feeling or whatever, I'll be back, or I'm coming back. I'll come back to you, or we'll do this later.
Yeah, yeah.
And by doing that, it would go away, and then he could go on about his out of body experience and do whatever the heck he was going to do in his out of body experience. But like he could just, instead of like pushing it down and trying to like say no, 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 this is bad, this is evil, he was just like, okay, I acknowledge that I'm feeling this feeling, and I'm just going to put it on the back burner and we'll address you later. And then that feeling would go away. So anyway, that it made me think of that.
No, I like that because it's more like I was saying about the acceptance, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what we talk about the letting go process. We've talked about this on shows before, where you were where you are just allowing yourself to feel whatever emotion comes up, and then
Yes.
kind of letting it go from there. But yeah, good stuff. I think there's something else that popped up, but now I forget. It's all right though.
That's okay. Something else maybe that I was
It'll come back to me.
gonna talk about is just briefly is this concept of just loving and accepting this past version of yourself. Um so you don't have to like um I don't know, be angry at whatever you went through, you know, your past.
You're just doing your best.
Yeah, just accept that you were doing your best at the time.
Yeah, I think the past is much more of a useful tool if you use it as a tool to learn. Use it as a learning tool. That's what I was trying to say. If you made a mistake or something happened, you just remember, okay, well, when I did this behavior, this is the outcome. Let's not engage again in this behavior. Or if I want to, let's do it, but I know what the outcome is going to be, so I'm not going to be a victim later when it comes to bite me in the ass. So yeah, it's good. If you get
Um,
stuck in the past, it's another spiral. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and you mentioned pedestals again, so it reminded me of something that I had thought of in an episode that hasn't come out yet because we recorded for future episode. Um, but I briefly said it in that one. But we talk mostly a lot about putting people on a pedestal, right? But you can also put ideas on a pedestal, right? You can put ideas on a pedestal, or you can put them in a pit. Just like you can put the occult and the esoteric on a pedestal. Like, oh, that's the thing. That's what the the book was talking about that the ones who do this, they're like, oh, I'm better than you because I know more esoteric wisdom than you know. Or you can put it in a pit and you can be like, I hate it. This is evil. You know, I stay away from it and blah, blah, blah. I don't know that either one of those is the best way to go about things. Right.
It's yeah,
Um,
it's the worshiping of the light over the dark or the dark over the light. That's what it all comes down to, really.
yeah.
Perfect.
But I was gonna say, I had a note about something that I can't remember if it was like on a modern episode of Sherlock or if it was in the book that I was listening to the audiobook of the Sherlock stories, Sherlock
Oh, there's a
Holmes.
show too, or a movie?
Well,
I have
a
no idea what
show
it is.
from 2010. Did you ever see it?
Oh, I don't know, but we were.
With Benedict Cumberbatch. You didn't see that one?
Oh, maybe a long time ago, but we should probably watch it again because the
It
movie is really good, but I bet with him it's really good. Yeah,
Yeah, that's my favorite.
that's your
Um,
boy.
I really liked his portrayal.
I'm benedicted to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I liked his portrayal. We're Cody and I are watching it. He's watching for the first time. I'm rewatching for the third time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a good show. But there was a point where, and it must be the show, I think, because I feel like um the guy who plays Watson in the show, Martin Freeman, the one who plays the Hobbit.
Oh yeah.
Um, so he plays Dr. Watson. And he's like telling Sherlock because Sherlock is like so logical that it's almost like he doesn't have a heart and he doesn't care, quote, care about people. And it kind of reminds me of me because I've been kind of accused of being like a little too logical and not like having the empathy or the sympathy or the feeling, of
Yeah,
for
I
things.
know that struggle.
And so it
Yeah,
kind of
like
reminds
Data from Star Trek,
yeah,
Next Generation. Yeah, I get it.
yeah. Or
Yeah,
like what's his name from the other Star Trek, the original Star Trek? Um
Spock.
Spock. Yes. It's funny how you have those archetypes, right? Like Spock and Data. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and then you have like Captain
And
Kirk
Sherlock Holmes.
and Sherlock Holmes. Yeah.
Yeah. Um so anyway, he's at some point, I can't remember the story, but I just remember the topic. So he said Dr. Watson was telling Sherlock, how can you just not care about these people? How come why can't you just help them? Like, and Sherlock was like, does it help them to care? Like, does it help them? It's something to that effect. Don't quote me. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but like he's like solving the case is more important because then that will help everybody. Like then this serial killer won't keep killing people. But if I focus on one person and I'm just like, oh, I'm caring about this person, that's not going to help the situation.
That's so
Um,
fun.
but here's the thing. This is where I thought of it because I thought of the pedestal thing because he says, don't. He told Watson, don't make people into heroes. Like he was like, don't make me into the hero. So Watson was putting Sherlock on a pedestal and like, why don't you care about these people? I just thought it was funny.
These who are these people? Yeah, I could see it's great because you don't if you realize it, it's just like in the Tao it kind of says it too, but you don't want to be put on a pedestal because then people worship you and then it doesn't become about your ideas anymore. It's about you and you as a person can be ripped down,
Mm-hmm.
slandered and set
Put
up
in a pit.
and put in a pit and make mistakes and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you're the
In that
scapegoat now.
in that show, the modern version of Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch, you can see how he also gets put in the pit easily because there's characters that put him in the pit, you know. There's of course the ones that put him on a pedestal and then the ones that put him in a pit. So,
Yeah, and that's the problem with greatness or fame. You know, people are going to look at you, but then make it all about themselves.
what did
Yes.
you watch that video that I put in the chat about the it just made me think of like the niche chat we have, which is like really small, and we don't have like 800,000 people. You know, we don't even have 800, let alone 800,000.
Yeah,
But
right.
um it's just because was it about like I forgot what that video was about, but it made me think of our chat.
We do have an
Oh,
amazing chat. Oh, I was going to say someone
yeah.
once described it as the only chat on the internet that makes him not want to kill himself. So we have that.
um, but well, what do you think? How are we doing? If I might have one little thing left.
Yeah, we're just under 2 hours, 1 hour and 50 minutes and 44 seconds. So yeah, let's do that thing and we could wrap it up, I guess. We'll see if there's
Okay.
anything else. I'm sure
Wow,
I'll have
this is
something else to say, sure, too, before the end.
okay. I just want to share this is interesting because I've been reading about Manly P. Hall um and his stuff, and I came across he has a freaking he had a freaking tarot deck, you
A
guys.
freaking tarot deck.
He had a freaking tarot deck. Like, wow. Here, let me make it maybe a little
Like,
bit.
whoa.
Yeah, I cannot so this is crazy because I was showing Brandon, and when I looked at it, it was 100, and now allegedly it's on sale.
Whoa.
Crazy,
All right.
huh?
They must have known.
Yeah.
Today, Manly Fee Hall Day. I wonder if this exists, if it's anywhere else.
I looked online and like Brandon, it's insane. People have really like older versions of this because these were like limited print, some of them, like the old version of them. And some dude on like, I don't know if it's eBay or whatever, was selling an older deck from the 80s that was like a reprint for $795.
Whoa.
Yeah. So like 10 times this.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. But
Does
anyway,
it though?
I just thought it was interesting. He had this guy named Knapp, whoever he was, helped him do a lot of artwork for different books. I think he helped him do the artwork for the main book that the big giant book that he wrote, right? The encyclopedia book. What's it called? Please remind me.
It's Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Yes, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. So that is the guy who helped him do the art. I'm pretty sure. But
There's
I
a
guess
book here on Amazon. It's called The Nap Hall Tarot, a flip book, full tarot deck, and in an oracle book. Ask a
I
question.
saw that, but then I saw the reviews didn't look so
Um,
good. I don't know how old that book is.
One of the reviews is in Espanol. Hmm. Well, it's a $25 gamble and you can return it, I guess. Anywho, interesting.
Yeah. And interesting, this is on sale for 75.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be cool. That'd be a great addition.
It'd be a great gift.
Yeah. For your favorite tarot readers. Uh,
Hint, hint, cough, cough. No, I'm just kidding.
there's one that's out of print here on Amazon. That's too bad. Wonder if they're selling
Yeah,
used.
that's probably the very original one
Yeah. Oh
because
well.
this is a limited edition reprint, apparently, that they just
Yeah.
recently did. And I just came across this like a couple of days ago. So it's crazy that the day I look, it's 100, but I look today and I just looked right now and it's 75. Even earlier this morning when I looked, it was 100. So like probably while we were recording, it went on sale.
Whoa. That's crazy, everybody.
Yeah.
Isn't that nuts? That's really cool. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if there's a version of the Tao from Manly P Hall somewhere,
What, right? I wonder.
or like in his notebook somewhere.
He did so many, he wrote so much.
And talked so much too.
Yeah. Lectured and everything.
Uh, I could say that we're watching the show 6 Feet Under, the show from HBO. It was around in the early 2000s, and they mentioned Ram Dass. One of the characters has a mom and dad that are like new agey spiritual, and they're like, way into the weird stuff. But they're like, they said something about, I guess they're having a renewal of their vows, and they're like, oh yeah,
Vowels.
vow. They're having a renewal of their
Vowels.
vows. A-E-I-O-U and sometimes Y and W. They're reviewing that. And I think the wife was like, "Oh, my husband, whatever's, I think he's on the phone with Ram Dass trying to like spruce up his vows or something." I was like, "Whoa," because that was 2003. He was still running
Wow.
around spry. Richard Alpert. I'm like, and I was like, "Please make a cameo," but he didn't. I thought they might have him because
Something in my closet just shifted and just fell over. Like
yikes,
nothing touched it.
it's our mini earthquake.
No. Maybe something or someone is trying to tell me something. I don't
Could be.
know.
So yeah, it's an interesting show. It's about, I think we talked about it a little bit, but it's about death. It's a family that lives in a mortuary.
Oh,
And they grow, so it's like the sons are older, and there's a daughter that's just like, and when the show starts, she's like a senior in high school, I think. And the sons are older and they're running the thing now. It's pretty interesting. It's a prodigal son story included in there because one of the sons like went away to do his own thing, but a lot of symbolism. It's really cool. So yeah. Anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to add to this topic of occult or esoteric, but I think we pretty much nailed it in how we look at it. Um, yeah, again, we just look at these things and try to decode them and what makes sense in the realm of esoteric, which we look at as working on ourselves. So, thank you guys so much for hanging out. Is there anything going on in the chat? We need to I had it hidden.
Lucacina
I
dropped
posted
his
the chat.
phone.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
I think we're
Disney
getting
Jones.
messages. Maybe it's like, okay, you're done now. It's time to get off.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks Blue. Thanks Kurt for saying what's up. And yeah, go to morelawsmoreproblems.com. Don't go to moreproblems.com. Don't click on the Over Sharon tab and don't donate to us and don't come here. Just kidding. We don't want to tell you what to do. But you definitely should because it's a lot of fun. Come here every Thursday, hang out with us in the best darn chat and the internet for the best darn show on the internet. And I only have one thing left to say. What do we say to the good people, Sharon?
That once you start over Sharon.
Then you totally stop over Karen.
That's right.
That's right. Remember, everybody, we're not trying to tell you exactly how to live.
We're just giving you tips on, the esoteric and how to do the self work
That's right,
and be
everybody.
a better version of yourself.
Exactly. All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Until next week, we'll see you later and keep over sharing. Ciao.